Hey everyone, it's Movie Mike here, and today I'm going to discuss the movie Big Eyes. During the 1960s, women were reliant on men. Nevertheless, Margaret Olbrich defied this norm, and in a decisive moment left her husband, taking her daughter Jane with her. She embarks on a new life in San Francisco, unsure if she can successfully raise her daughter alone, but resolute in her determination not to return to her husband. Margaret, a graduate of the Art Institute specializing in illustration, is determined to secure a job at a furniture factory. Although her portfolio consisted mostly of portraits, she can't afford to be unemployed. Drawing portraits become a weekend activity for Margaret, surrounded by fellow artists. It is during one of those days that she meets Walter Keane. Margaret sells her portraits for a modest one, $2, while Walter, an artist himself, commands prices of $35 for his paintings. Margaret prioritizes pleasing the portrait owners, while Walter is focused on the commercial aspect. Walter specializes in painting Parisian street landscapes, some of which are exhibited in a local cafe where he invites Margaret for a date. Margaret is charmed by Walter's free-spirited nature as a creator, and soon they begin painting together and doing grocery shopping. Eventually, they get married. The blissful wedding and honeymoon in Hawaii quickly pass. Even during their vacation, Margaret can't be separated from her notebook and pencil. From that point on, she signs her paintings with her husband's last name, Keane. Upon returning to the city, Walter takes Margaret's paintings, along with his own, to a gallery. Despite Walter's persuasive efforts, they decline to exhibit his works. However, he finds it easier to strike a deal with a local jazz club owner who allows him to decorate the walls leading to the restroom with his creations. Walter's landscapes go unnoticed, but one of Margaret's paintings catches the attention of a wealthy lady who purchases it. However, Walter insists that he is the painting's creator. When Margaret discovers this, she becomes angry and asks her husband to stop such deception. However, the popularity of the big-eyed children painting soars, and Walter can't let go of such a lucrative opportunity. Unbeknownst to Margaret, her husband continues to deceive her as she works on her paintings. If she hadn't decided to surprise him by visiting the club, the deception might have remained undiscovered. She could have started a major scandal, but instead, the heroine finds herself in a state of shock. Public interactions, promotions, and marketing are not her strong suit. She allows her husband to be credited as the artist behind her paintings for the sake of their public image. The paintings become a sensation. Margaret feels uneasy about deceiving the public, but Walter skillfully argues that the authorship doesn't matter. They are a family, and together they earn a living for a bright future. Walter tirelessly promotes his wife's paintings by any means necessary. He gifts them to well-known personalities and establishes his own gallery, keeping Margaret's true identity as the artist a secret. Margaret is forced to lie to everyone, including her own daughter. Many people attend Keane's gallery opening, and Margaret is forced to endure the praises heaped upon her husband as a great artist. Meanwhile, Walter exerts every effort to convince the crowd that he himself painted all the artworks, but his attempts are rather mediocre. Only a charlatan like Keane could mix up oil and acrylic paints. The next step involves making a television appearance. But how can Walter defend his works if he doesn't understand what drives Margaret's creative process? It's a deeply personal endeavor for her, as each painting is like her child. Yet Walter manages to concoct a somewhat believable story about war, Paris, and impoverished children. His tale even manages to elicit a few tears from the audience. Popularity catches up with the Keanes, or rather, with Walter. Despite the gallery being packed with people, sales are disappointingly low, since they only purchase posters. It's actually a clever commercial idea to sell reproductions on posters, plates, and mugs instead of actual paintings. Margaret is slightly taken aback by this abundance of big-eyed merchandise, which ultimately leads to the birth of a new artistic style for her. The heroine requests her husband to exhibit her new paintings in the gallery. The Keane family grants an interview to a journalist with the intention of presenting Margaret in her new role, not just Walter's wife, but an artist in her own right. The problem is that Margaret doesn't know how to present herself in the same manner as Walter does. While he effortlessly charms the audience, Margaret finds herself at a loss for words, uncertain of what to say. In a fit of nervousness, she ends up engaging a random visitor in a discussion about numbers and numerology, but such an approach won't sell a painting. The Keanes swiftly amass wealth and move into a luxurious mansion. Here, far away from the bustling city, Walter can keep Margaret and her studio hidden. After all, he's terrified of the truth about the paintings being exposed. No one, not even Jane, is permitted to enter the studio. This is why Walter becomes furious when he returns home to find Margaret's friends surrounded by big-eyed paintings. The Keanes manage to play it off as if it's Walter's studio, but the evening is already ruined. Margaret's only friend hastily departs their new home, driven away by the shouts of a drunken Walter. One day, while selecting a new canvas for her work, Margaret makes an interesting discovery, a box of Parisian landscapes. However, these paintings are signed with the names Scenic. Could it be that all these landscapes were not painted by Walter at all? Indeed, the man had simply cleverly covered the original signature and added his own. Margaret realizes that she is married not to an artist, but to a common fraud. Walter had always dreamed of becoming an artist since childhood, but it never worked out. That's why he opted for a simpler path. Margaret grows weary of her husband's pressure, and she yearns to expose the truth about the real author of the big-eyed portraits. However, Walter cannot afford to lose such a lucrative income. He would sooner harm his wife than allow her to reveal their scam to anyone, especially since a major exhibition is looming in New York, presenting Walter with a chance to achieve fame. He coerces Margaret into painting a huge canvas featuring big-eyed children. This artwork drains Margaret to the point that she falls asleep right next to the painting, where Jane eventually finds her. Artists typically undergo a selection process to be featured in an exhibition. However, Keene has become accustomed to finding alternative ways to gain entry. Renowned art critic John Kennedy takes notice of this and writes an article expressing his less-than-glowing opinion about Keene's works. Consequently, during the grand event celebrating the exhibition's opening, Walter causes a scandal. Later that evening, he identifies the culprit behind all his troubles. Margaret, of course. Supposedly, she orchestrated everything intentionally. Drunk and angry, Walter throws lit matches at his wife and daughter. Seeking refuge, they escape to the studio, but the tormented artist doesn't relent. He pushes burning matches one by one through the keyhole until the studio ignites. Margaret and Jane manage to flee from the house and embark on a new life in Hawaii. A year later, the tranquil rhythm of Margaret's life is disrupted by a call from Walter. Margaret desires a divorce, but it comes at a steep price. Walter will only sign the divorce papers if she surrenders her rights to all her paintings and, in addition, creates 100 new ones for him. Margaret sees no other way out, or so she thought until Jehovah's Witnesses knock on her door. Meeting them and reading the Bible provide a new direction for the story. Margaret resolves to reveal the truth and avoid being deceived again. Consequently, when Walter receives the paintings, he encounters an unpleasant surprise. They bear Margaret's signature. On the same day, Margaret gives an interview on local radio, unveiling the truth behind the big-eyed portraits. In response, Walter portrays his wife as mentally unstable, claiming that she can only trace existing paintings. Margaret initiates a lawsuit against Walter and the newspaper that published false information. The judge swiftly dismisses the case against the newspaper, leaving Walter to defend himself. The courtroom proceedings turn into a comedy, with Walter assuming the leading role. He stages a performance by cross-examining himself and spinning tall tales for the judge. In the end, to ascertain the truth, the judge proposes a simple solution. Right there in the courtroom, they will determine the real artist between the two of them. Margaret and Walter are provided with all the materials necessary to create artwork. They have 1 hour to paint a picture and defend themselves. Margaret is confident in her abilities, while Walter panics, unsure of what to do. His only recourse is to complain about the pain in his hand and leave the easel untouched. Margaret creates a new painting titled Exhibit 224 Inches and emerges triumphant in court. The true artist behind the big-eyed portraits is now known to everyone. What transpired with the characters after the trial? Margaret resided in Hawaii for 25 years until her return to Los Angeles in 1991, where she established her own gallery. As for Walter, he never admitted that all the paintings were actually created by Margaret. He passed away in poverty. And with that, we conclude our story. Thank you for listening to us until the end. Your likes and comments greatly support our channel's growth. Thank you, friends, and we'll catch you in the next video.